What happens when one of the most controversial royals meets one of late-night TV's most relentless hosts? You won't believe what unfolds when Prince Harry sits down with Stephen Colbert for what was meant to be a routine promo interview. The explosive clash that erupted last night has Hollywood reeling, social media in chaos, and viewers rethinking everything they thought they knew about both men before the fireworks. The Late Show studio hummed with its usual pre-show energy as crew made final tweaks to lights and sound. Harry arrived earlier in a tailored navy suit, composed and ready to promote his latest charitable initiative. No one in the room could have predicted that within an hour, a seemingly standard segment would spiral into one of the most shocking confrontations in late-night history, as cameras rolled and the theme faded. Stephen Colbert launched into his monologue's sharp wit, blended with political jabs. The audience laughed on cue, unaware they were minutes from a moment that would dominate headlines. When Colbert finally introduced his guest, the applause was warm. Harry emerged with a practiced royal wave and settled into the chair. Confident from countless interviews, "Your Royal Highness, Colbert," began with an exaggerated bow that drew chuckles. "Welcome back, though calling you Your Royal Highness feels a bit odd, given your, shall we say, complicated relationship with the institution." Harry's smile tightened, but he stayed composed. "Titles are just words, Stephen. What matters is the work and the impact we make." "The work?" Colbert echoed, a familiar edge creeping in. "Speaking of work, this new initiative, mental health awareness, is important. But some critics say you and Meghan have turned personal trauma into a lucrative business. Care to respond?" The question hung loaded. Harry's jaw clenched. The media training briefly slipped. "Those critics misunderstand what we're doing. This isn't about money. It's about helping people facing what we've faced." Of course, Colbert nodded, mock sympathetic. "But let's be honest, you've signed multi-million-dollar Netflix and Spotify deals, wrote a best-selling memoir with intimate family details, and now another venture. When does helping people start to look like helping yourself?" The room quieted. Harry leaned in, composure cracking. "Interesting you question my motives when your career is built on making jokes about other people's pain. At least I'm trying to make a positive difference." Colbert's eyebrows rose. A dangerous smile formed the pressure point he thrives on. Rich words from someone who decries media intrusion while courting media at every turn. "You can't have it both ways, Your Highness." Tension thickened. Camera ops shifted, sensing something exceptional. Harry gripped the chair arms. When he spoke again, his voice carried a harder edge rarely heard publicly. "I came to talk mental health, helping veterans and families in crisis, but you want to play games and toss accusations. This is the same toxic behavior that drove us from the UK." Colbert leaned back, the playfulness fading into something colder and more calculated. "Toxic behavior, that's what you call asking fair questions about your public actions. How very royal of you." But what happened next turned an already tense exchange into something far more explosive. The studio lights seemed to blaze. As Colbert leaned in, his trademark smirk hardening into something predatory. "Since you brought up the UK, Harry, let's go there. Your grandmother served for 70 years without airing family drama. And here you are, barely 2 years after her death, still milking a victim narrative. How do you think she'd feel about you turning the royal family into your personal cash cow?" The audience gasped. Even by Colbert's standards, this was brutal territory. Harry's face flushed, and for the first time, his composure shattered. "Don't you dare," he said, voice low and dangerous. "Don't you dare bring my grandmother into this. You didn't know her. You have no right to say what she would or wouldn't think." Colbert didn't back down. If anything, Harry's reaction energized him like a shark scenting blood. "Oh, I think I do have that right, Your Highness. Unlike you, I don't hide behind palace walls when I have something to say. Your grandmother stood for duty, service, and keeping private matters private. You represent the opposite." The words hit like blows. Harry's hands trembled. When he spoke, decades of anger and pain edged his voice. "You want to talk duty and service? I served 2 tours in Afghanistan while you were cracking jokes about politicians. I've dedicated my life to wounded veterans, to causes that actually matter. What have you done besides tear people down for entertainment?" Colbert's laugh was cold. "What have I done? I've held powerful people to account. I ask the hard questions others are too polite or afraid to ask. Like now, why does a man who claims to want privacy spend 3 years seeking attention? Why does someone who talks mental health seem fine wrecking his own family's mental well-being?" Silence fell. Even the camera ops seemed frozen, unsure whether to keep rolling. Harry stood abruptly, towering over the desk, fury barely contained. "You think this is accountability? This is harassment. This is exactly the predatory behavior that killed my mother." The mention of Princess Diana sent shockwaves through the room. Colbert's eyes widened for a beat, then narrowed. He doubled down. "Your mother? You're hiding behind that tragedy too. Convenient how the Diana card appears whenever you're challenged. She died in a car accident, Haranod from criticism. You've spent your adult life using her death as a shield against fair scrutiny." The studio reeled. Harry went white, then crimson. His voice, when it came, was razor tight. "How dare you minimize what happened to her? How dare you, from your comfortable chair making millions off others' misery, tell me how to grieve my mother?" Colbert straightened, more calculating than ever. "I'm not telling you how to grieve. I'm saying stop using grief as a weapon against anyone who questions your choices. Your mother endured real persecution and invasion of privacy. You court the same media at every turn, then cry victim when they don't write what you want." The audience was silenced with hands over their mouths. This was no longer a segment gone wrong. It was character assassination in real time, and Harry was struggling to hold on. "You don't know what you're talking about," Harry said, voice shaking. "You don't know what it's like to have every move scrutinized, to see lies printed about your wife, to have your children threatened by the same forces that destroyed your family." But Colbert wasn't done. Sensing his guest was near a breaking point, and with a predator's instinct, he moved in for the final, devastating strike. "You know what I think, Harry?" he murmured, his voice dropping to a whisper more menacing than a shout. "You're exactly like your father, weak, entitled, completely unable to handle criticism. The only difference is Charles waited until he was king to reveal his true colors. You couldn't even wait that long." The comparison hit like a lightning bolt. Harry went rigid. The studio fell so silent the camera's hum was audible. When he finally spoke, it was barely above a whisper, but the fury in it made everyone recoil. "What did you just say to me?" Colbert smiled. He'd found the pressure point. "You heard me? You're just like Charles, petulant, self-absorbed, convinced the world owes you. At least he waited until after your grandmother died to begin his reign of incompetence. You started your tantrum while she was alive." Harry's fists clenched at his sides. "You have no idea what you're talking about. You sit in your ivory tower, cracking jokes about people's lives, and think that gives you the right to judge my family, to judge me. It's not judgment." "Harry, it's observation," Colbert replied with mock reasonableness. "What I see is a man handed everything who threw it away for a Hollywood actress, then spent years whining about the fallout. Your brother William, he's actually doing the job, serving his country without constant drama. You're just another celebrity trying to stay relevant." The mention of William was the last straw. Harry stepped closer to the desk, his voice booming across the studio. Don't you dare bring my brother into this. You know nothing about our relationship or what we've been through. William and I have always had each other's backs. That hasn't changed." Colbert's brows shot up theatrically. "Really? Is that why he skipped your last big media appearance? Why he didn't defend you when you accused the family of racism? Face it, Harry, you torched that bridge like all the others." The audience was stone still now, many glancing around as if they wanted to leave but couldn't. This had gone well past entertainment into public unraveling. Harry shook, his face flickering between rage and something close to tears. "You're a pathetic excuse for a journalist," he said, voice cracking. "You hide behind comedy to say what would get you sued if you said it straight. You're a coward who attacks people when they're vulnerable and calls it accountability." Colbert twisted the knife. "Vulnerable. Harry, you've made a fortune off being vulnerable. You and Meghan have monetized pain better than any one Netflix specials, tell-all books, podcasts. You turned trauma into a business plan. At least be honest about it." Harry slammed his palm on the desk so hard the coffee mug jumped, spilling across scattered papers. "Honest? You want honesty? Fine. I came here expecting a professional. Instead, I'm facing a bully who gets his kicks tearing people down. This isn't journalism, Stephen, it's sadism." Camera operators frantically signaled the control room, unsure whether to cut to commercial. In the front rows, audience members covered their faces, unable to watch. Colbert rose, matching Harry's posture across the desk. "Sadism. That's rich from a man who wrote an entire book about how much he despises his family. You want sadism? Try publicly humiliating your father and stepmother while they're trying to serve. Try accusing your family of racism on international television without proof." Harry's reply was almost a growl. "You want proof? You want to know what it was like growing up in that family? The conversations about how dark my son's skin might be. The complete abandonment when Meghan was suicidal. The institutional racism that made my wife's life hell. Conversations no one else remembers." Colbert struck back with surgical cruelty. "Conversations that conveniently can't be verified. How convenient that the only witnesses to this alleged racism are you and your wife. How convenient these revelations surfaced after you'd left the family and needed a justification. What happened next would be replayed for weeks, analyzed frame by frame." Harry's composure didn't just crack, shattered. You know what? He screamed, his voice echoing with raw, unfiltered rage. "I'm done. I'm done with people like you who think you can say whatever you want about my family, my wife, my children, and hide behind entertainment. You're nothing but a sanctimonious bully with a television show." He tore off his mic. It clattered across Colbert's desk and hit the floor. Feedback squealed as the sound tech scrambled. "This is exactly why we left. This is the toxic, destructive behavior that made our lives unbearable. You sit in a comfortable studio, make millions by destroying people, and imagine that makes you a hero." Sensing he'd gone too far, but unable to resist, Colbert stood and called after him as Harry stormed from the chair. "Running away again, Harry? Like you ran from your duties? From your family? Some habits don't change." Harry stopped, turned back. The look in his eyes, fury, pain, disgust haunted everyone who saw it. "You want the difference between us, Stephen? When I see someone struggling, I try to help. When you see someone struggling, you kick them while they're down and call it comedy. History will remember who was on the right side." He turned toward the exit. Colbert couldn't leave it alone. "History will remember you had everything and threw it away for attention. Enjoy Hollywood, Your Highness. I'm sure your grandmother would be proud." That final mention was the breaking point. Harry spun around, rage contorting his face as if he might charge the desk. Security at the door tensed. My grandmother, Harry said, now deadly quiet but audible across the studio, spent her life serving others with dignity and grace, something you know nothing about. She would be disgusted by what you've become, a bitter, cruel man who gets power by tearing others down. You're everything wrong with the media today. He resumed his march to the doors. Some audience members filmed. Others covered their mouths. This was no simple meltdown. It was the total collapse of any pretense of civility between two public figures at the threshold. Colbert made one last catastrophic error, calling out for all to hear. "Give my regards to Meghan. I'm sure she'll have great material for your next Netflix special." Hand on the handle, Harry turned one last time. "But chilling, you just made the biggest mistake of your career, Stephen. This conversation isn't over." The door slammed. The echo seemed endless. For long moments, no one moved. The audience didn't know whether to clap, boo, or sit in the oppressive silence. Colbert stood behind his desk, trying to hold a smug smile but visibly shaken. Cameras kept rolling as producers scrambled to salvage the show. Colbert tossed a few weak lines about royal tantrums and Hollywood drama. Laughter was strained, and some people quietly headed for the exits. Within hours, clips were everywhere. #ColbertFR trended worldwide as outrage over the host's treatment of his guests spread. Royal commentators, mental health advocates, even rival hosts weighed in, most condemning the aggression. The backlash was swift. Sponsors pulled ads. Viewers flooded CBS with complaints, and high-profile guests canceled. The network's phones rang non-stop with demands for Colbert's removal. Meanwhile, supporters praised Harry's exit as a man defending his family against an unrelenting bully. Sympathy surged from unexpected quarters. By week's end, The Late Show's ratings hit their lowest in years, and serious questions swirled about Colbert's future. What was supposed to be a routine interview had become a career-defining disaster, one that would shadow both men for years.